Hey, how are you? It's Chris Roselli here with Nonfiction Fitness. You know, part of what I do all day long is I work with people to get their muscles strong so that their muscles can help protect their joints and their other tissues so that those tissues can heal. Now, the reason why many people come in and see me in the first place is because they have one particular symptom that they really don't enjoy. That symptom is pain, which is the subject of today's video. What is pain? What is pain? You know, pain is a very misunderstood thing. Okay, a lot of people think that pain means that you're hurt. A lot of people think pain means that you're just getting old. A lot of people think that pain means that you're weak. A lot of people think that pain is just all in your head. Well, all of these statements have some degree of truth to them, okay? And I'm going to sort of try to break it down for you in the most simplistic way I can. And I'm going to do my best to not water down the science, but I'm also going to not get too technical so that you can't follow along. So I'm going to start really simple here and tell you about these two different aspects of pain that are really important to understand. So you have a physical aspect of pain. Okay, that's the first type. Okay, so what's a physical aspect of pain? Well, if we have this human here who falls down and hits her knee on the ground, and it starts to swell up, and there's a bruise there, chances are pretty good she's going to feel some pain as a result of that injury or that incident. And what's her brain telling her? Her brain is telling her the pain is right here. It's in your knee. That's where the problem is. Now, a lot of people who have experienced something like that would tend to think that the pain actually is in the knee. Okay, that the pain itself is in the location where they feel it. But that's actually not true. And that brings me to the second aspect of pain, which is the mental aspect. So the pain that she feels in her knee is actually just a bunch of information in her brain that's being sent from her knee. So here's what I mean. So you fall down, you bump your knee. Okay, let's say it's a really serious fall and you actually like messed something up, like you fractured your kneecap. So that injury, okay, let me just get over here. Okay. That injury is at the top of this hierarchy, okay? This is a physical issue. You know, something broke. Well, that then leads to something called inflammation, which, by the way, is not a bad thing, okay? It's actually part of the normal healing process. If you didn't have inflammation, your body couldn't carry out the healing process the same way. And it needs to swell, it needs to do all the things that it does in order to trigger that properly. Okay? And sometimes it can get to a point where you need a little bit of relief from like an anti-inflammatory if you just can't stand it anymore. But, you know, my advice to you is to definitely try to minimize that because you need the inflammation to help with the healing. But that's a whole separate lesson. So you have inflammation, okay? So the inflammation is happening around the injury. Now what happens then is that one of the symptoms of inflammation starts to kick in, which is pain, which is basically your knee talking to your brain saying, something's wrong down there. And that's where we get the symptom of pain, okay? But pain is not a physical thing. It's actually a mental thing. Okay, there's parts of the brain that interpret pain, and when the signals are sent from this injured area to the brain, they go to those regions and it activates that part of the brain saying, you're hurt, something's wrong. Now this is the normal process, okay? And the pain is good, okay? In one sense, okay? It doesn't feel good, but it is good because what does it do? It gets you to stop and pay attention to the injured area, and it more than likely will get you to take some sort of action to try to remedy the injured area. So it's a good thing. Now, just as a little side note, over-the-counter painkillers or pain relievers are typically just trying to bring the inflammation down so that you don't feel pain, but prescription painkillers like opiates, hydrocodone, oxycodone, things like that, what they're actually doing is they're trying to interrupt the signal from getting to the brain so that you don't actually perceive the pain. Okay, so they sort of work off two different mechanisms, but they both lead to you feeling different. So the pain is actually a mental component. The inflammation and the injury are physical components. So here's what's really interesting. So for many, many years, people thought that the degree of the injury determines the degree of the pain. So in other words, the more severe you hurt yourself, the more pain you're going to feel. Now this is pretty typical in most scenarios. If you fall down and break your leg, it's going to hurt worse than if you just bruise your skin and break some blood vessels. However, that's not true in every case. And in fact, what they've discovered is that sometimes pain can be heightened or lessened regardless of the extent of the injury. Here's how they first began to discover this. So, years ago, they had mostly men coming back from the war with serious injuries. Like, let's say somebody got shot like 15 times in their arm, okay, and their arm's just a bloody, mangled mess, okay, and there's no way that their arm could be saved. It has to be amputated, or else something is gonna go wrong somewhere else. So they amputate it. They get rid of that arm. Well, 5, 6, 7 weeks later, once the healing has already started to happen and the wound is, being patched up and stuff by the body, these men will often feel pain in like the hand that doesn't exist anymore. They actually had it happen so often that they gave it a name. They call it phantom limb syndrome. So this really baffled a lot of the scientists that were trying to figure pain out back in those days, because they thought, wow, well, how can you feel pain in a part of your body that isn't even there anymore? And it baffled them so much that they started to look deeper into why people feel pain. And they realized something very important. They realized that the mental component of pain often is the most influential factor in what people actually feel. Here's what I mean. So, going back to this example, this woman falls down, breaks her kneecap, okay? So, at this point, her brain is sensing that there's a problem there, and it's feeling pain. Well, what she thinks about that pain, and what kind of mood she's in, and how her emotions change as a result of this injury, will actually determine in large part how much pain she's liable to feel. So this woman has a few choices. When she falls down, breaks her kneecap, she can think, okay, I'm hurt, but everything's gonna be fine. You know, I'm going to call the ambulance, they're going to take me to the hospital, they're going to do what they do, they're going to take care of me, and I will recover. Or she could think, oh my gosh, like I am broken. There's no hope. Those two different scenarios will produce a different mental experience of pain, okay, according to research. One of the studies that's come out recently has to do with an acute type pain situation where they would put lasers on people's arms and kind of burn the skin a little bit. And they told the people, hey, you know, told one group of the people, they said, hey, I want you to think about nothing at all in regards to this pain. Just experience it and just let your mind go wherever it's going to go. They told a second group to think that the laser was actually damaging their skin. They told the third group that they needed to think that the laser was a warm, welcome sensation on a cold day. Okay, so they gave it a positive spin rather than a negative, like the middle group. Well, across the board, what they realized was that under all the same conditions, the third group experienced much less pain. In fact, they even hooked the brain up to MRIs to see what activity was elicited in the brain from each one of those experiences. And they found that the people that thought positive about the pain actually had less of the pain center activated. Now, the people that thought negatively about the pain had more of the pain center activated. And in both cases, it was the same heat, same extent of injury, if you will, and all variables were all the same. So this brings up an interesting question. Is a lot of your pain just in your head? Now, please don't get offended by that question, because of course there is a physical component. Like those people in the study, they wouldn't have felt pain if there wasn't something physical that was triggering the pain response. However, what we're talking about is not whether you hurt or whether you don't hurt. It's about severity. You know, how much do you hurt? Now, the severity of the pain is driven by our mental assessment of the situation. That's really important to understand, because if you're dealing with a chronic condition or a serious injury, the last thing that you want to do is think negatively about it. You know, think hopelessly about it. Think that this is like really, really bad. It's really bad. It's gonna mess you up. It means you're breaking down. If you keep it in the positive, studies show you'll feel less pain. Now, in 1963-64, there was a theory that was proposed to explain this. And it's called the Gait theory. So we have the brain and we have the spinal cord. The spinal cord receives the information from the rest of the body about what's going on there, and it sends it to the brain for it to be processed, and so the conscious mind knows what's going on. Well, in the example of this knee injury, okay, so let's say the knee is down here, and it's sending that message to the spinal cord, which is traveling up to the brain, and it's being interpreted as pain. Well, what they're realizing is that there is this gait, okay, and it's sort of a physical gait, and I'm not going to explain all the technicalities of it because, you know, I don't want to bombard you with a bunch of Latin words, but basically that there's this gait there that sort of opens and closes depending on a number of different factors, okay, and those factors can be stress, anxiety, you know, just various moods that you might be in. And what they're realizing is that certain emotions, certain mental states actually will open this gate or close the gate. And when the gate is open, the pain signal goes through largely unobstructed. And it has a greater severity once it reaches the brain. When the gate is more closed, it actually blocks a lot of that and less of it goes through. And there's less of a severe feeling of being in pain. And so what research has shown is that certain things like distracting yourself from the pain, thinking about something else will help to close that gate. Positive emotions will help to close that gate. So if you're laughing and you're having a good time and you're having fun, that will help close the gate. If you are looking at the pain in the positive, that could help close the gate. And just like that study showed, even if you just mentally tell yourself that everything's okay, it can actually change your experience via closing this gate. So what kind of things open the gate? Well, negative emotional states, being under high stress, being anxious, worrying, focusing on the pain, even I would go so far as to say even talking about the pain. Now, what side do most people fall on? Do they fall on the closed side or the open side? In my experience, most people tend to fall on the open side. Because most people, because they don't understand the nature of pain or injury, tend to think about it negatively. And if you've done that, it's not your fault. You don't know any better. This stuff is not common knowledge by any means. So you shouldn't beat yourself up or feel bad about it. But just know that there are things that can close this gate for you that can make your experience of pain a lot less. And I'll just go over a couple of those with you. Number one, think differently about your pain. When you start to have pain, think about it in a more hopeful sense. First things first, think about the pain as a positive, that this pain is there to tell you to be careful with that part of your body so that your body doesn't have more stress on it, and so it can heal faster and feel better sooner. The second thing is that you want to avoid speaking excessively about your pain or your condition, because all that does is remind your brain of what's going on, which kind of puts your focus back on that area and causes you to have more of an open gate. Also know that on days when you're a little bit more anxious or worried or depressed, you're probably going to feel more pain. Now, sometimes the worry and the anxiousness and the depression kind of arises from the pain, but you just got to do your best to try to keep a positive outlook. Distract yourself with hopeful things, with things that make you feel good, maybe things that make you laugh. That will really help to close this gate. And then lastly, just know this, that your body always wants to heal itself, okay? It's part of our survival. In fact, we're programmed to repair damage anytime our body senses it. Okay, this is why, if you fall down and scrape your arm or your leg and you have, an open wound, your body will heal it. It'll repair it. And this is what it wants to do all the time. So just keep that in mind, that your body is a self-healing machine that will repair tissue as quickly as it can, given all the other variables that are important to the equation. How much water you drink matters, how you eat matters, how much you sleep matters, how much rest and recovery time you give that part of your body. Some people, they want to just pop an anti-inflammatory or another type of painkiller and go out and do something that stresses that area, And then they wonder why they never recover, why they're always in pain. Well, it's because you add stress to the tissue that's already hurt, and your body has to repair that stress as well as the stress that you've already had, and it just makes it take longer. So keep all that stuff in mind as you're going through your pain and your injury recovery, and just know that this gate will open and close depending on all those factors that I just mentioned, and that a lot of that is stuff that you can change. So hopefully that was helpful. Definitely watch that again a couple times to really let all that sink in, and email me with any questions that you have, chris@nonfictionfitness.com. And be sure, if you haven't yet, go onto my website and download my free book called Improve Muscles, Improve Life, where you can also see how improving your muscle function will help create a better internal environment that will allow your body to heal faster, feel better sooner, and get you back to doing what you love. So I had a blast. I hope you did too, and I will see you on the next video. God bless.